heroes of the faith. Last week we met Mordecai and Esther, and we heard the first part of their story. If you missed that, you can find it on our YouTube channel, because today we're going to find out how the story ends. Do you remember that Esther had been made queen, and that Mordecai and all of the Jews were in mourning because Haman, who was the most powerful official in the whole empire, had convinced the king that all of the Jews should be destroyed on a single day in the year to come? We left off last week with Esther and her maids and Mordecai and all the Jews in Susa fasting for 3 days ahead of Esther going uninvited to plead with the king for her life and for the lives of her people, the Jews. Let's find out what happens next. On the 3rd day of the fast, Esther put on her royal robes and went into the inner court. Now remember last week we heard Esther tell Mordecai that everybody knew to appear before the king in the inner courts uninvited was a death sentence, unless the king held out his golden scepter. So even though she may well be doomed to die, Esther does it anyway, and she goes into the inner court. And the king? Well, the king was sitting on his throne facing the entrance, and when he saw Esther, he held out his golden scepter. The king asked her, "What do you want, Queen Esther? What is your request? I will give it to you, even if it is half the kingdom." And Esther replied, "If it please the king, let the king and Haman come today to a banquet that I have prepared for you." The king turned to his attendants and said, "Tell Haman to come quickly to the banquet, just as Esther has requested." So the king and Haman went to Esther's banquet. While they were drinking wine, the king said to Esther, "Now, tell me what you really want. What is your request? I will give it to you, even if it is half the kingdom." And Esther replied, "This is my request and deepest wish. If I have found favour with the king, and if it pleases the king to grant me my request and do what I ask, please come with Haman tomorrow to a banquet that I will prepare for you. Then I will tell you what this is all about." Haman was a happy man when he left the banquet, but when he saw Mordecai sitting at the palace gate, not standing or trembling nervously before him, he became furious and he went home fuming. When he got home, he gathered his friends and his wife together, and he began to boast to them about his great wealth and his many children, and he bragged about the honours that the king had given him and how he had been promoted over all the other nobles and officials. Then Haman added, "And that's not all. Queen Esther invited me to a banquet that she prepared for us, and she has invited only me and the king to dine with her again tomorrow." But then he added, "But this is all worth nothing as long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting there at the palace gate." So Haman's wife and all his friends suggested that Haman should have a gallows 22 metres tall built, and in the morning Haman should ask the king to have Mordecai hanged on it. With that done, Haman could then go on his merry way to the banquet with the king and with Queen Esther. The suggestion pleased Haman, and he ordered the gallows to be built. That night the king had trouble sleeping, and so he ordered an attendant to bring him the book of the history of his reign as king. In the records, he discovered the account of how Mordecai had saved the king from the plot to assassinate him. "What reward or recognition did we give Mordecai for this?" the king inquired. And the attendant replied that nothing had ever been done for Mordecai. "Who's that out there in the outer court?" the king asked. For as it happened, Haman had just arrived to ask the king to order that Mordecai be hanged on the gallows that he had built. "It's Haman," they told him, and the king ordered that Haman be brought in to him. Still thinking about Mordecai, the king asked Haman, What should I do to honour a man who really pleases me? Haman thought to himself, who could the king possibly mean but me? And so he replied, if the king wishes to honour someone, he should bring out one of the king's royal robes and a horse that he himself has ridden, one that's got the royal emblem on its head. He should have the royal robes and the horse handed over to one of his most noble officials, who should make sure that the man that the king wishes to honour is dressed in the royal robes and placed on the king's horse, and he should be led through the city with the officials shouting as they go. This is what the king does for someone he wishes to honour. Excellent, exclaimed the king. Haman, quick, do all that you have just said for Mordecai, the Jew. Do not leave anything out that you have suggested. So Haman took the robes and put them on Mordecai, and he placed him on the king's horse, and he led him through the city, shouting, this is what the king does for someone he wishes to honour. Afterwards, Mordecai went back to the palace gate, but Haman hurried home, miserable and feeling humiliated. But the king's men arrived and quickly took Haman to the banquet that Queen Esther had prepared. So the king and Haman went to Esther's banquet. And again, while they were drinking wine, the king said to Esther, Esther, what is it that you really want? What is your request? I will give it to you, even if it is half the kingdom. And Queen Esther replied, if I have found favour with you, and if it pleases you to grant my request, I ask that my life and the lives of my people be spared, because we are about to be slaughtered. Who would dare do such a thing? The king asked Queen Esther. And Esther replied, our enemy is Haman. Haman stared at the king and queen in terror. And one of the king's attendants said to the king, Haman has even built a gallows at his house so that he could hang Mordecai, who saved your majesty's life. Hang Haman on it, the king commanded. And so Haman was hanged on the gallows that he built for Mordecai. The very same day, the king gave Queen Esther all of Haman's property. And Esther told the king that Mordecai was related to her. And from then on, Mordecai was allowed to enter the king's presence. The king took off his signet ring with his seal on it, which he had taken back from Haman, and he gave it to Mordecai. And Esther put Mordecai in charge of all of Haman's property. Then Esther spoke to the king again, throwing herself at his feet and crying. She begged the king to do something to stop Haman's evil plot to kill the Jews. The king told Esther and Mordecai that they could send a message to the Jews in the king's name and seal it with his signet ring. He said that the message could say whatever they wanted it to, but that they had to remember that whatever had already been written in the king's name couldn't be taken back. So Mordecai had a decree written that gave the Jews authority to unite together to defend their lives. And the day that was chosen for the decree to come into effect was the same day that Haman had named as the day the Jews could be destroyed. The new decree was sealed with the king's signet ring and sent out to each of the provinces in the king's empire. There was great celebration amongst the Jews, and when the day came that both Haman's decree and Mordecai's decree came into effect, the Jews gathered together and they overpowered their enemies. So it turned out all right for our two heroes, didn't it? In fact, Mordecai was even made the Prime Minister. It seems that Esther was in the palace for just such a time as this, as Mordecai had said. And we can trust God to be at work in our lives, in the places where we are too. We can all be heroes of faith, ordinary people who God can use in extraordinary ways. Thanks for joining me.